Tokyo Skyline, Episode 1, The Ghost in the Woods. A storm ravages a back road in the middle of nowhere. 3 black SUVs sit silent on the side of the road, surrounded by woods, fields, and darkness pressing in on all sides. In the middle tile, a man is breathing heavily in the back seat, the look of nervousness sketched in every feature on his face as his light brown eyes dart back and forth, scanning the windows of the truck for any sign of movement. Hard to tell what's going on outside with the heavy rainfall, feeling like he was making himself see things staring out into the endless rain and darkness. He started playing with his lighter, opening it and sparking the flame and then quickly snapping it shut. He repeated this several times before realizing how hot it was inside the truck with no power. He pulled at his collar for relief, but before loosening his tie around his neck completely, he tied his long black hair into a ponytail. He set the lighter in his lap and began patting the rhythm on his knees. After a few moments, he shot a glance over to his champagne soaking in half water, half melted ice. What the hell, he told himself out loud, and reached for the bottle, unfastened the top, and turned it up. After a couple of deep, long swigs, he tightened the cap back on and threw the bottle back into the bucket with a splash. He patted himself and started fumbling through his jacket pockets and pulled out a pack of smokes. He pushed a cig to the top of the pack and pulled it out with his lips. He tossed the box in the seat beside him while dropping the lighter in his lap on the floor. "Shit!" he yelled. "Calm down, Terry," he told himself. Terry took a deep breath and tried to calm down. He fumbled through the darkness at his feet, found the lighter, and lit a cigarette. He took a long drag before blowing the smoke towards the ceiling. He mumbled to himself in the night, "I might really fucking die. Fuck me." Harry shifted in his seat repeatedly, too nervous to sit still. He pulled his phone back out of his pocket and hit a button to bring the device back to life. He typed in his password and pressed his recent call list. One name was at the top of the list with 5 attempts. Sarah. He pressed the name a 6th time. The phone rang once, and the same automated message played. "Your call cannot..." He cut the voice off by hitting the end call button. How in the hell do any of us not have a signal out here, he thought. Took one more drag off his smoke before cracking his car door just slightly and flicking it through the opening. He quickly closed the door as if that crack was enough to invite death into the back seat with him. He then leaned forward and knocked on the privacy glass that separated him from the guards in the front seat. The glass rolled down with a slow hum to reveal 2 men turned around in their seats to face him and had on matching black suits with bulletproof vests over the top of their jackets. The fellow in the driver's seat was a black man with a bald head and wore a "I've seen so many war zones" look on his face. His partner in the other seat was a younger-looking white guy with sharpened features, his hair white blonde and pulled into a ponytail. He had a scar on his cheek that started from his left eye and stopped at the top of his lip. He too looked like he had seen his share of action. Their appearance made Terry feel a little better about his chances of surviving the night. Before Terry could open his mouth to speak, the guy in the driver's seat said in a deep voice, "Everything's under control, Mr. Marshall." "Under control? Are you shitting me?" Terry hissed. "What part of this is under control? The part where all 3 trucks died at some goddamn back road in the middle of nowhere that you guys picked. You picked because you said it was the safest route." He gestured quotation marks around the word "safest route." "Mr. Marshall, we are the best in the business, and we ensure..." The hired gun in the passenger seat started to speak, but his ass got cut off again by Terry, who at this point was screaming. "Was it under control when your friends in the first truck got out and 2 out of the 4 caught arrows in the fucking face?" "Arrows, man!" Terry screamed. "Who's trying to kill us? That punk in those comic book movies? This shit is nuts." Terry was staring at both men, breathing deeply, obviously becoming more unhinged by the second. After a couple long seconds of silence, the man in the driver's seat spoke. "They were boats," he said. "Boats?" Terry repeated, confused. The man nodded slightly. The other guy spoke up. "Yep. From a crossbow, not a bow and arrow." "Does that make it worse, or am I missing something?" Terry said, slightly calmer than a few moments ago. The 2 men in the front seat stared at each other. "What is it?" Terry said, reading the looks in their faces and sensing that something might be worse than what he thought. The younger guy in the passenger seat started speaking again. There had been a set of assassinations carried out over the years, with the kind of efficiency only found in like a Hollywood movie. He paused, popped the clip out of his Glock, checked the mag, and shoved it back in. Rain hit the windows of the lifeless truck hard as the wind picked up, causing Terry to jump at the sound. The man continued his story. All these jobs, from what I heard, had one thing in common: bolts and skulls and injuries caused by slashing. Most likely a sword. Not one clue nor trace who this mysterious killer is. Nothing. Terry's blood ran cold. He spoke softly. Do you think that's what we're dealing with? The big guy in the driver's seat spoke up. Bullshit. Those hits were done by a team, Mr. Marshall. Nobody is that good. This is not a fucking Jet Li movie. He laughed loudly while slapping his partner on the shoulder. Man, I heard all this BS back at HQ. Somebody supposedly dressed in all black with a black hood and some kind of traditional Japanese mask. I don't know what. White cat mask with a smile on it? That was the only known eyewitness account? He smirked. Sounds like somebody watches those fucking Asian cartoon movies a little too closely for me, boss. He cracked his neck from left to right. The little smile on his face vanished, and his expression went blank, back to stone. He looked up through the front windshield. In reality, it's got to be a small team after you. Ex-military is my guess. The team in the truck behind us, and the two remaining agents from the first truck, they broke down into pairs, fanned out to check the woods around us. Guessing from the gunfire we already heard, it's only a matter of time before the woods cleared of all hostiles. He sat back in the seat and got comfortable, folding his arms over his chest as if he assured himself and everybody else in the vehicle that everything was going to be fine. My only regret, he said, half yawning, we're stuck babysitting instead of cracking heads with the rest of the team. The younger guy finally spoke. You know what, big man? You're probably right. 3 tours in the Marines, and I ain't never seen nobody pull off half the shit I read in those reports. The others have probably already dealt with the assholes out there in the woods and are sweeping the area to make sure that there's nobody else. Silly me. Hey, yo, sorry to fill your head with ghost stories, Mr. Marshall, the young man said with a smile and a wink as they locked eyes through the rearview mirror. Call me Terry, Terry said while sitting back in his seat. The young one nodded and said our code names are Hog, Cowboy. I reckon you could tell which name goes to who, Cowboy said with a chuckle. Terry gave off a faint laugh and rubbed his face slowly, then reached for his pack of smokes. At the same time, lightning struck, illuminating everything outside for just a moment, and Terry's heart jumped in his throat. Yo, guys, he screamed, while crawling back to his side of the truck. What is it, Marshall? Hog said, sensing the panic in his voice. Someone is running towards the truck. I saw him when the lightning hit. Both men put their guns at the ready while looking out of the window of the truck frantically. Man, I can't see shit through this storm, Cowboy shouted. What about you, Hog? Nah, I ain't got nothing, he replied. Marshall, you sure you ain't jumping in shadows back there? He turned and looked at him and faced him. Then a crash hit the truck as one of the other guards appeared at the driver window. He started beating on the glass rapidly, causing all 3 men in the truck to jump back. This guard was an older-looking white man with white in his beard and mustache. He had a bolt lodged into his shoulder and was leaking blood all over himself. Get the client out of here, he shouted against the storm. They're all dead. Everybody is dead. Make a run for it now. This motherfucker. A serrated sickle on a chain appeared from over the man's shoulder and hooked him in the eye. He let out a scream of pain, but he was gone as quick as he appeared, snatched into the darkness. All 3 men stared at each other for a moment. Terry broke the silence, stumbling over his words. He said, What are we gonna do, man? What are we gonna do? Yo, grabbing Hog's shoulder. What are we gonna do, man? I don't wanna fucking die. Help me, man. What are we gonna do? Sit back and shut up, Hog roared, coming halfway into the back seat to put his face up against Terry's. It's him, Cowboy said, still staring out the window where his teammate was a minute ago. Hog flew back into his seat. Don't start that crap with me, man, pointing a finger at what might be his last teammate. Get your hand out of my face, Cowboy spat. What else could be going on here, man? A highly trained team of 10 agents took out in minutes, setting traps like this where all 3 trucks die on a back road in the middle of goddamn nowhere in upstate New York, jamming the phone lines. Shut the fuck up and open your eyes, man. This ain't no regular hit. 2 men stared at each other. The sounds of their deep breathing filled the truck. Terry quietly stared at both of them and debated making a run for it. His faith in his guards was dwindling, running thin. They can't protect him, he thought. But maybe, just maybe with the storm, he could lose whoever was chasing him. Hogg broke the silence and Terry's conversation with himself in his head. I'm not waiting around in no damn truck to die for both of you motherfuckers. Talking to himself. That's for damn sure. Hogg then looked up with a sadistic smile and punched Cowboy in the chest. You game, motherfucker? He got out of the truck and made his way to the trunk. Cowboy let out a whistle and turned to look at Terry. Look like it's kill or be killed, my friend. Take this. He tossed his personal firearm in the back seat of Terry. I have a little girl. The cowboy spoke softly. I need to get back home to her. My girlfriend. He paused. I mean her mother died giving birth to her. Me and my brother's all she got. Safety's off. Point and shoot. He nodded towards the pistol. It's your life. You can fight for it or not. I don't know what you did to have death come for you like this, but you can make peace and accept it, or you can fight for your future. Those were the last words he spoke before he got out of the truck. Terry was alone now, with nothing more than the sound of the storm, a gun, and the choking fear and dread that was hugging him like an old dear friend. Outside the truck, Hogg made his way to the trunk. He now had an AR and was cracking and throwing glow sticks out into the darkness with his free hand. This gave the area around the truck a faint green glow. Cowboy ran to the trunk and put out his own AR, checked it, and ran beside Hogg. Any sign of our ghost yet? He shouted over the storm. Nah, Hogg said, shaking his head, but I bet they're out there somewhere close, just watching us. Seeing how they haven't ran up yet, I take it this ghost ain't too fine to get shot, just like anybody else, which tells me this ain't no supernatural shit. They flesh and blood, just like me. At that moment, Cowboy lit a flare and tossed it at the edge of the woods. The flare landed at the feet of a person standing perfectly still, dressed in all black combat attire with matching black trench coat. They had on a hood and what looked like a traditional Japanese cap mask. It was white with red outlines around the eyes and a sinister smile painted across from it from ear to ear. Hogg and Cowboy froze, looking at each other. It's real? I'll be damned, Cowboy said, whispering into the night, talking to himself more than he was talking to Hogg. Hogg didn't have any more words and started spraying bullets into the stranger's direction. As if the gunfire had woke him up from a trance, Cowboy shook it off and he started firing his automatic weapon as well. The assassin faded back into the darkness beyond the light of the flare. 2 guards sprayed wildly into the storm for 10 more seconds before stopping. I think we hit that sumbitch, Cowboy, Hogg said, wild-eyed and smiling. Stay frosty, Cowboy said while looking down the sight of his weapon. We ain't out to fire till that bastard's confirmed KIA. At that moment, a bolt tore through the rain and hit Hogg in the knee, instantly dropping the large man to the ground. Hogg grabbed at his knee while screaming out in pain. The bolt went through the front of his knee and the bloody tip was sticking out the back of his leg. Cowboy ducked low to the earth while looking at his partner's mangled limb. Shit, he whispered. We gotta fall back, big man. Plan our next move. We too exposed out here. Hogg started laughing while looking up as the rain fell, as if he didn't hear one word Cowboy just said. One shot, brother. One shot is all it took to take me out the fight. That type of marksman's aim, in the dead of night, during this goddamn storm. He grabbed Cowboy's shoulder and stared him deep into the eyes. It ain't possible by no normal human. Nah, not none I've met. Cowboy nodded and said Asian cartoon shit, huh? With a I told your ass look on his face. Hogg spit on the ground and quickly opened and closed his mouth but chose to remain silent. Cowboy extended his hand and said, Come on, man, let's get you to your feet. He helped him up. They tried to regroup at the truck and figure out what to do next. But before either man could react, the killer appeared out of his shadows and he sidekicked Cowboy several feet, sending him rolling back, slamming into a tree hard. Hogg stumbled back surprised, but quickly regained his bearings. He planted his bad leg, raised his rifle to fire at point-blank range, but the manslayer quickly sidestepped and kicked the gun towards the earth as Hogg squeezed the trigger. Bullets ricocheted off the ground left and right, and one bounced up and hit Hogg in the side. He yelled out a yell in pain. In the same moment, the murderer pulled out a sickle and a chain from his coat and spun it fast and launched it at Hogg. It quickly wrapped around him like a serpent ready for its meal. The assassin yanked the chain, causing it to go straight with a metal snapping sound, and the sickle at the end of the chain impaled Hogg between his shoulder and his neck. Feet away, beyond the light of the flares, Cowboy pushed himself off the ground and set up against the tree moments ago he slammed into. While trying to catch his breath, he choked and started coughing hard. After the fit subsided, he wiped his mouth, and in his palm, rainwater was mixing with blood. He stared at his hand, rubbing blood and dirt and rain between his fingers, as he thought to himself, no matter the training, no normal person can cause this much damage with a single kick. He stood himself up, grunting the words, "Who the hell are you?" As he found his balance, he looked to where he had just been standing a minute ago and froze at the sight before him. Hogg was laying face down, wrapped in a chain, one arm pinned to his side within the tightly coils of metal. His other arm was grasping at the ground as he tried with no success to crawl away. The murderous bastard stood over him, watching in silence, then slowly removed the crossbow from his back. He pulled a bolt from his long black trench coat and reloaded the weapon with a slow click. Cowboy's heart started beating fast, and his anger rose. He was going to put his partner down like a dog, and there wasn't shit he could do to help. His rifle was at the assassin's feet. Feeling like he needed to do something, anything, but standing there like a fucking coward, he yelled, "Asshole! Have you no shame to kill a man that can't fight back?" The hitman, or woman, Cowboy still wasn't sure, had the crossbow aimed at the back of Hogg's head, but slowly turned their gaze to look at Cowboy. Even with the soul-chilling, smirking mask on, Cowboy knew that they had locked eyes. After a few long seconds where all you could hear was the rain and the howling of the wind, the killer pulled the trigger, still looking at Cowboy, as the bolt in an instant went through his friend's skull, with the bloody tip bursting out of Hogg's chin. The killer returned the crossbow to his holster built in the back of the trench coat. He bent down and slowly unraveled his death chain from around the corpse. The final tug to free the weapon made the body roll over, face up with the head sitting awkwardly, crooked, sideways, causing Hogg's dead eyes to rest upon Cowboy. Cowboy was shaking with anger, and his thoughts were racing. "How do I take this guy down?" he said to himself. He glanced at the rifles laying near the killer's feet. "If I can get one and drive him back," he thought, "I can get to one of the trucks and check to see what other weapons were left." "It won't work," the assassin said calmly. The stranger's voice was robotic and distorted. Cowboy was taken back by the words. He lost his train of thought altogether and stared blankly at the cutthroat. "Your plan," the killer spoke again. This time Cowboy was sure the mask had a device in it that hid their true voice. "You're trying to find a way back to your rifle. Truth is, even if I handed it to you, it wouldn't do you any good." The manslayer mocked while lifting one finger and shaking it slowly from side to side. Then slowly, a loop of chain he had in his hand fell, and at the end was a blade dancing a few inches from the ground. The sickle was still clutched in his other hand, along with more loops of chain. Cowboy knew, with one twirl of the death weapon, either side was death. Throw in the crossbow, and it ain't hard to see how one person can take out a whole squad. Cowboy took a deep breath and made up his mind that he was going to make a run for it for the trucks. 50 feet never felt so goddamn far. But out of nowhere, Terry Marshall opened the truck door, stumbled out shooting at the mass murderer with Cowboy's gun. Cowboy bolted for the trucks and threw himself at Terry, tackling him to the ground. Mere seconds later, a dagger on a chain dug into the window where Terry's head just was. Cowboy looked at the dagger. He said to himself, "They threw it with enough force to put it through bulletproof glass?" The killer yanked the chain, exploding the glass as the weapon flew back to his hand. Terry yelled, "Get off me!" "Mr. T, listen, we need to work together," Cowboy hissed while holding Terry's face still to make him focus on himself. "We are going to die if we don't." Terry grabbed one of Cowboy's hands and bit down hard, causing the agent to let go of him from the pain. Cowboy grabbed at his hand in pain and then backhand Terry across his face. His head bounced off the car door. "Grown men don't bite, asshole," Cowboy yelled. Terry said, "You're on your own," pushing Cowboy on his back. He then made it to his feet and ran straight into the woods, basically leaving Cowboy to fight and die to buy him time. Cowboy yelled, "Fuck you," as Terry disappeared into the tree line. The storm was dying down quickly to barely a drizzle. Cowboy heard footsteps and turned to see his would-be killer standing a few feet away, staring at him. "Your prey is getting away. Why are you not running after him?" he said. "Leave me be." "Fuck him. Do what you want with him." The assassin looked towards the woods and spoke in a distorted voice. "I planned no less than 16 scenarios for this assignment. His life is already claimed. He's just too stupid to realize it. Until he lets me know which way to go, though. Let's discuss what to do with your life." The killer sat Indian style on the pavement a few feet from Cowboy. "Do you have any clue why that man needs to die tonight?" Cowboy rolled his eyes, put his head down, let out a sigh and laughed. "I could care less, asshole. I'm not your new BFF. Fuck the talking. Kill me already or stop fucking toying with me." The cutthroat was quiet for a whole minute before he started up again. "That man tested new military robots for a company he worked for." Cowboy, highly irritated at this point, screamed, "What part of I don't give two flying shits do you not understand?" The killer waited for him to calm down and politely continued. "He works for Campbell and Rudolph, and on orders from his boss, he tested the new bots in an African village 3 weeks ago. The robots killed no less than 56 children, 80 women, 50 elderly people, while the men were away hunting. When they returned to find their mothers, sisters, and daughters slaughtered, they were unknowingly the last part of the test to videotape how effective the new bots were at close-range combat to potential buyers. A whole village put to the blade in a single night for profits and upsell." Cowboy looked at the ground and then spoke softly. "That's horrible, but how could I have known that? How could I know what Mr. Marshall had done before tonight? My team got a good-ass paying assignment to guard a rich prick and get him from his party in upstate New York back to the airport untouched. That's the job, and my job was to take him out and whoever stood in my way," the killer said. "But in your eyes, I'm a monster. And in others' eyes, I'm getting paid to make bad men pay for their actions. A sense of balancing the scales, how have you? Perception's a bitch, huh?" They both were quiet for a few moments. The killer spoke. "You said earlier, before I killed the big guy, I had no shame for killing a man that couldn't fight back." Cowboy replayed Hogg's last moments in his head. "So?" Cowboy simply replied. "So?" the manslayer said. "Get up and fight for your life. No guns, no crossbows. Show me you value the will to live." Cowboy looked confused, but thought about his daughter's smile and how she would run to him as soon as he hit the door. He got up, body sore, but head held high. "Rules?" "No rules," said the assassin. "Besides, no firearms, and, of course, I'll put my crossbow away." The masked killer then reached into his trench coat and pulled out a combat knife and threw it at Cowboy's feet. "I got that off the body of one of your people." Cowboy picked up the knife and instantly remembered seeing the dark-haired woman with a big mouth wearing it on her belt, one of his former teammates. He pulled it out of his sleeve and watched it gleam in the moonlight. He looked up. The stars and the moon could be seen again as the last part of the storm was passing. The battle for whether he could take another breath past the night would be bathed in moonlight. Cowboy was an ass-scratching, whiskey-drinking, getting kicked out of a dive bar type of dude, not a romantic. But even he could see how a moonlit hand-to-hand fight was poetic in a way. He held the knife in his hand sideways and took a wide stance. The killer got up and pulled out his death chain. He had the sickle in one hand and a fistful of chains in the other. They both circled each other in silence. The only sound was their steps dragging on the pavement. Cowboy made the first move. He took a couple of steps and lunged at the masked opponent. He swung his knife at the killer's face, but the person quickly backstepped as the knife barely scraped the mask. The manslayer flicked the sickle in their hand so the back was facing against the agent before delivering a punch to the side of the head. Cowboy stumbled back, smiling while blood trickled down from the fresh cut on his brow. If I had to die, he thought to himself, fighting on his feet seemed to be the only way to go. He paused as he readied himself for another go. He had to try everything in his power to get back home to Bailey, his sweet baby girl. He steeled himself. If he could help it, this back road, these woods, they would not be his grave. Cowboy ran at the assassin and started swinging repeatedly with a crazed look in his eyes. Each swing missed by mere inches as the headhunter danced around his attempts to land a blow by parrying with the sickle. Cowboy glanced at the ground and quickly grabbed a large piece of jagged glass. Cowboy ran at the death dealer, both arms outstretched, and began his wild assault again, slashing with both weapons like a madman. This time, after a couple of swings and hitting air, Cowboy swung hard with the hand clutching the glass. Instead of parrying the swing, the killer ducked altogether, then grabbed Cowboy's wrist, turned his body, and tossed Cowboy hard over his shoulder straight onto his neck. His body went limp on the impact as he bounced off the pavement. The assassin took a few steps forward to where Cowboy was laying. "It's over," they said in a cold, distorted voice. "You gave it your all. No shame in dying knowing you fought with a full heart." Cowboy started moving and made it onto his hands and knees, still staring at the ground. "Not yet," he said between breaths. He grabbed at the assassin's pants, pulling himself up, and rested his head on their knee. "Not yet," he repeated. The killer stared at him, clinging around their leg. "This is not befitting a warrior in his last hour. Remove thyself from around my leg and fight me some more if you like. But if you're gonna beg like a dog, I might as well put you down like one." The manslayer raised his hand with the sickle high over his head, ready to end it in one swing. "You don't get to decide when my life ends," Cowboy said, while his hand was feeling around on the ground. He looked up into the mask of his would-be executioner. At the same time, he found the knife he had dropped. He smiled with a bloody-filled smile. "I said, not yet," he yelled as he drove the knife through the boot and foot of the assassin. The hooded warrior let out a scream and swung down the sickle. At the same time, Cowboy stretched out his hand to block the blow. The sickle went straight through his hand. Cowboy yelled out into the night, but tightened his hand around the sickle, breathing hard, while standing up, pushing the sickle high above his head with all his determination and strength. Killer and agent stood face to face now, arms outstretched. With Cowboy's free arm, he landed a haymaker to what felt like the killer's ear. The murderer answered with a punch of their own across Cowboy's jaw. They traded blow after blow, neither wavering from the damage. Cowboy went in for a headbutt, but bounced off the hard mask, cracking his own skull open. "Seriously?" the killer said. Cowboy shook it off and stepped on the handle of the knife he drove into their foot. The killer yelled out in anger and pain. Cowboy tried to kick to the gut while the pain was doing its job of a quick distraction, but the killer blocked the kick with a kick, turned their bodies sideways while their hands were still locked, and landed a brutal side kick to Cowboy's chest, removing his hand from the edge of the sickle as he flew back, rolling near the trucks. The cutthroat reached down and pulled the knife out of their foot, looked at the bloody blade, then tossed it into the grass. They started spinning the sickle from side to side to gain momentum before launching it at the bodyguard for hire. Cowboy had just got his bearings when he saw the sickle coming down from the sky and rolled just in mere seconds as the sickle grazed his face instead of piercing his skull. The assassin called the death chain back with a yank and ran over to Cowboy, tackling him into the side of the truck as he tried to get up. The assassin ended up on top of Cowboy after a brief struggle. They were trying to drive the sickle into the middle of his forehead with both hands as Cowboy used his one good hand to try to hold off the assault. The tip of the sickle slowly started sliding into his head. He stuck his bad hand into his mouth and pulled out a boat tip that he found on the ground after he was kicked just moments ago. He shuffled it between his fingers until it was positioned between his knuckles, then drove it deep into his would-be killer's neck. The assassin stopped their assault and grabbed at the wound on their neck as they were spewing blood everywhere. Cowboy pushed them off and crawled as fast as he could through the blood and glass on the road and reached one of the rifles, checked it, rolled over onto his back as the assassin stood back up. "Fuck you," he said to Alice as he fired 9 times in the chest of the killer. The assassin fell back to the pavement, motionless. Cowboy took a couple of deep breaths, then lay back down on the road. It was over. He was alive. For now. His body was in so much pain, he didn't want to move. He knew he was losing too much blood. He needed to seek medical attention. He would have to get moving now. He closed his eyes to rest a moment. He couldn't imagine walking that far back in his state. His head hurt, his ears was ringing, and he kept hearing a beeping sound. Once he realized the beeping wasn't part of the concussion he was sure he had, he turned his head to find the location of the sound. His eyes lit up. The beeping was because one of the doors on the truck. The SUVs had power again. But how, he thought. He didn't have time to figure it out. If he was going to live, he needed to go now. His legs stung as he got up. His hand was going numb. He unzipped his bulletproof vest and slid it off and let it hit the ground, same with his jacket. He unbuttoned his shirt and peeled it off. It was soaked in blood and sticking to his skin. He tore a piece of the shirt off with his teeth as he slowly limped towards the truck at the front of the line. After getting a good chunk of the shirt torn off, he threw the rest on the ground and started wrapping up his hand. As he got near the body of the assassin, he got an uneasy feeling. He slowly walked past while watching it, waiting for the hitman to spring back to life. If he wasn't so close to death's door, he would take time to get that mask off and find out who almost killed him. But not dying was the top of his to-do list at the moment. He knew he had lost his phone when he first stepped outside to confront the manslayer. He didn't have the time nor strength to search for it. As the agent made it to the tie hole in the front, he was hit by a strong smell of death. The bodies of the assassin's first 2 victims were dragged to the side of the road and had a white sheet over them. Poor souls never stood a chance. Cowboy shook his head, opened up the truck door, and climbed in. The keys were still in the ignition. He gave him a quick turn, and the truck started right up. His vision was very blurry at this point. But all I have to do is make it back to the city. About 15 minutes away, he told himself. He started to pull off and passed out. The body of the assassin was twitching back on the pavement. The holes in their chest and legs were crawling with little tiny black insects, nanites, small robots that can repair almost any damage done to the host. The hitman's chest started moving up and down. After a few moments, the dead came back to life, sat up and looked around slowly while they cracked their neck side to side, then stood up completely. The death dealer waited till all the nanites were finished pushing at the metal from the bullets, which fell to the ground with a metal tapping sound as they settled on the road. The wounds were closing as well. They bit down and picked up their sickle and chain, wrapped it back in the loops and stuck it back into their trench coat. The comm killer noticed the trucks were running, reached in their coat pocket, and pulled out a device that had been shot through. Without the remote, the device known as a deader wouldn't work. Without the dead zone it makes, the trucks and phones would work again. The assassin pulled out their crossbow and aimed at the tree in the distance and pulled the trigger. The bolt flew into the treetops, and seconds later there was an explosion. No remote, no need to keep the deader. Standard practice not to leave anything behind. The unknown manslayer noticed one of the trucks was pulled up from where it was parked before they had died and knew who was in the driver's seat. They walked over calmly and peered into the driver window to find Cowboy, half dead, spilled over into the passenger seat. The mask the life taker wore could read vitals and showed a faint heartbeat. Ironically, the killer's killer had 1 foot in the afterlife. They contemplated and went back and forth about slitting Cowboy's throat where he slept multiple times. But he was only the second person ever to kill them. His will to live outweighed their skills to kill, at least for the night. Cowboy had something to live for. Even now, his body was fighting, clinging to life. As a person who has ended so many lives, they could respect that. You fought with a full heart and won. I hope you live out your life you deem worthy, with the short time most humans get to live, the death dealer said out loud, talking as if Cowboy could hear him. They then scratched the glass slowly by running the sickle across the window. For your sake, if you live beyond tonight, may we never cross paths again. I swear on every god of death and every religion, if I ever see you again, my blades will swim in a river of your blood. See you later. With God's mercy, maybe never, cowboy. In the same instance, an explosion happened in the woods while the murderer for hire was still staring in the window. Our friend finally found one of my surprises on that note. I should bid you farewell. The hitman slipped into the woods after his true prey. Terry was crawling slowly through the tall grass and pulled himself up on a fallen tree that had been decaying. He turned himself over on his back, which took great effort, and looked down at his legs and started crying from the pain and the anger. He thought he was safe. He was starting to think he could escape this nightmare. He thought back to the moments ago when he was running through the woods and felt his legs snag on a string or a wire. He wasn't sure. But a second later, he heard a click, then felt a searing heat as a mind-numbing boom filled his mind. When he regained his senses, he tried to get up, but his right leg was missing up to the thigh, and his left leg up to his knee, both blown off, wounds burnt closed. He cried on the tree for a few more moments, then screamed, "What kind of sick fuck plants bombs way out here?" He started whimpering, "I can't die here. I can't die here, man." He kept repeating to himself. He reached in his jacket pocket and pulled his phone out. It hadn't worked most of the night, but maybe, just maybe, he can get a signal now. He typed in his code and pushed the name Sarah. It rang. Yes, he thought. Come on, sweet ass, pick up, pick up, pick up, pick up, he said repeatedly. The person you were trying to reach. Damn it! He ended the call quickly and tried again. He knew if Sarah would answer the phone, her father could fix this. He would send a team to find and save him. Plus his company could even give him some robotic legs to replace the ones he just lost. No answer. He hung up and dialed another number. After a few more moments, same result. No answer. Fuck me, he whispered into the night. You are pretty fucked, the cold robotic voice answered back. Every muscle in Terry's body froze as he looked around. He couldn't see anyone, but he knew who was out there, which means everybody, including Cowboy, was probably dead. Come on, what do you want with me? He started whimpering on the verge of crying again. You took my legs, man. That's enough, man. Go away. Go away. The killer was staring at his mark from a tree branch above his head. Terry Marshall, 6'1", Middle Eastern. The mask ran a facial recognition program and verified a complete match. Come on, man, Terry screamed. Or maybe you're a chick. Hey, baby, ladies love Terry. Ladies love Terry, man. I'll make your dreams come true, baby. The deaf dealer jumped out of the tree and landed in front of Terry, causing Terry to fall off the toppled over tree he was perched on. The assassin grabbed their crossbow off their back and slowly loaded a bolt with an even slower click. Listen here, you sicko. I know people, important people, Terry said while nodding frantically. You kill me, and they'll find you. Yeah, motherfucker. They'll find your family. They'll wipe you all out, man. Like he wiped out that village a few weeks ago, the assassin spoke calmly. Your life is worth more than theirs. Are all those guards I killed back there? What about their lives? All dead for the benefit of Terry Marshall. Terry stared back blankly, then wiped a mix of blood, dirt, and sweat from his face. He spoke. It was just business, man. You know, gotta take some L's to get that win, break a couple of eggs, all that good shit, right? Bigger picture? His voice trailed off. The killer didn't speak, which made Terry start crying again. Look, man, chick, whatever the fuck you are, I'll pay whatever. Just don't do this, man. Terry looked down while sobbing. My legs, man. You took my fucking legs. This can't be real. He was crying hysterically at this point. After a couple of moments of him crying into the darkness, his phone rang. Terry looked over at the glowing screen that read Sarah. He had dropped his phone when he fell. He reached for it. He could only get a fingertip on it. The manslayer moved forward a couple of steps. Terry yelled, "Stay away from me!" As he stretched to reach his phone, the assassin spoke. Study every mark I'm assigned, and you are by far one of the worst people I have ever had the pleasure to kill. Honestly, even if I wasn't getting paid, which I am, and a lot may I add, I would end your life free of charge. The death dealer pointed the crossbow at Terry. But I will be checking my direct deposit in the morning for Terry finally reached his phone and answered it. Sarah, baby? The crossbow clicked, and a bolt ripped through the air and hit Terry in his wide open mouth mid-sentence, pinning his head to the tree he was leaning on. Terry's body went limp, and the phone rolled out of his lifeless hand. A female voice was talking. Hello? Terry? You okay? Baby, hello? The killer walked over and picked up the phone and clicked video chat. Sarah Campbell stared at her phone and whispered, Video chat. She hopped out of her bed and ran to look at herself over in the mirror. She was a dark-skinned African-American woman who had long, flawless braids, flawless skin, and full lips. She put on and straightened her gold glasses before accepting the video chat. She held it up to get a perfect angle for Terry. She almost dropped her phone when the face that she saw was not Terry, but somebody wearing a white animal mask with a demonic smile painted on the front of it. Hello, Miss Campbell. Terry won't be coming home anytime soon. And turned the phone to show Terry's horrible face, eyes rolled back into his skull with a bolt sticking out of his wide, gaping mouth. Sarah screamed in horror and dropped her phone. Servants ran into her room to check on her, asking her if she was okay. She paid them no attention, and with a shaking hand she picked the phone back up. She mustered up only a couple of words. Who are you? What's going on? Why are you doing this? The killer calmly responded. Tell your father. The House of the 13 is coming. And the phone disconnected. The murderer hung up the phone and stuck it in the inside of their jacket pocket. They then pulled out their own personal phone, pressed the name, and waited. A woman's voice answered. Number 2. Glad to see you're still with us. I was just looking at your vitals. You flatlined for a bit there, dear. Are you okay? It's not like you to get bested by anybody. Small complications, ma'am, number 2 said. Nothing I didn't take care of. Well, yes. I only expect top results from you, of course, the woman replied. Thank you for your praise, Dr. Masato. Will we be carrying out with the next part of the plan, number 2 asked. Yes, but I had a genius idea, and I have a new way to go about things, darling. You'll be having to polish up your acting skills to pull this one off. Acting skills? Number 2 said, slightly confused. Why, yes, dear. I'll explain all the details more on a secure channel. Get yourself to the extraction point. Oh, and before you go, number 2, the first part of the plan will have you going to Japan. Have you ever been to Tokyo? Dr. Masato asked. No, I haven't, ma'am, number 2 answered. Oh, you will love it there, dear. I love it. I'll send you over a couple of good restaurants to eat at and some places of interest, too, in the files. Oh, and you must see the skyline at night. It's so beautiful. The skyline, ma'am? Number 2 repeated.